Super Mario 64, the game that, on one hand, gave our hero Mario a deep, interesting personality,
ravioli,
and on the other hand, gave cinematic authority to. So, is it worth playing still to this day? Short answer, yeah. Long answer, yeah. When Mr. Plumberman lets go the world into 64 bits, he did it with a big, heavy. The reviews went through the roof and journalists had a hard time finding the right words describing its epic awesomeness.
You could do so.
It was a groundbreaking game. Just to get you into the vibe of how groundbreaking it was, look at this, the last Super Mario game for the SNES. The first Super Mario game for the N64. It's everything but a smooth transition. Nintendo did a lot of cool things maneuvering the jump from 2D to 3D. Instead of having a flat overworld map where we could choose what levels we wanted to go into, they gave us a huge garden and a tall castle. Not only was this a cool way of translating an old function from 2D to 3D, it was also a necessity, since no one had experienced a 3D character controller with this much freedom before. Imagine going into VR for the first time. That's how disoriented people felt trying to navigate in 3D space back then. The open area of the garden invited the player to do some sick moves before getting into the actual gameplay. Before the gaming experience turned deep, it was as flat as paper. This made it very easy to foresee what directions the player was going to move. Up, down, left, right? But in 3D you could go wherever. 44 degrees here, 97 degrees there, 180 spin goodbye, see ya! Mario's like, Mamma mia! Some developers couldn't handle the lack of control and continued to force the player into something a bit similar to 2D, which wasn't bad in any way, it's just a different, more safe choice of game design. But Miyamoto and friends went a different path and tried to enhance the freedom even more. This mindset forced them to design the levels very differently. So, they introduced their old friend platforming to a new friend called exploration, using their third mutual friend collectibles. The three of them got along really well. If the goal of a 2D Mario stage was going from the left all the way to the right, 3D Mario turned the stage into a big open area with at least 7 reasons to be revisited using collectible stars. One star could be given to you for bullying a hermit king on the top of a mountain, another one for releasing a dangerous animal who's obviously changed for a reason. You get this one for delivering a baby to its mother. Sorry, delivering the right baby to its mother. Wait, why am I saying delivering? I mean giving. The baby is already born. More often than not, the same course would change a little bit when you go into it a second time. For example, plundering the sunken ship of its star in Jolly Roger Bay makes it float instead the next time you go into the course. In Tick-Tock Clock, you can alter the speed in which the course moves. Entering the course as the minute hand reaches 12 makes everything stand still. At 3, things move slowly. At 6, they're a bit faster and out of sync. And at 9, it's Sonic mode. Depending on how you jump into the painting of Wet-Dry World, the water level varies. Small jump, small water. Big jump, big water. Another really cool detail about the game is the way it handles music. Not only are the songs amazing, they interact with environment too. When we jump into Jolly Roger Bay, we start on land, far away from anything interesting. Here the music is being played as a beautiful arpeggio between 2 electric pianos, one in the left ear and one in the right. Going into the water makes strings fade into the arrangement, which enhances the feeling of progress. And finally, reaching the secret dungeon deep into the waters adds a bassline plus drums. Now it really feels like something is about to go down. Another cool place where they used this trick was in Hazy Mazy Cave. Here the composer Koji Kondo rearranged the that we all know from the first game. Clever enough, he put the melody of the underground theme in the lowest harmonic instrument, the bass. At this point, it would be impossible to miss the fact that you're underground. When you reach the deepest point of the course, the sick bass line is replaced by a mysterious choir. And suddenly, there's a big leviathan sailing like there's no tomorrow underneath the castle. You know, casual Mario things. All of these small dynamic changes in the level design and the music helps the game feel even more deep, complementing the already big leap from 2D platforming. One could argue that this game is the godfather to the open world genre because of the freedom that all of these mini-worlds provided. However, the biggest and the most controversial step Super Mario 64 took for the gaming industry was the way it handled the camera. But before we dive into this segment of the video, let me tell you about me, myself and I. Back when I was a smaller Oopa, I didn't have a Nintendo 64. My neighbor did though, so I was constantly in awe of his fortunate situation. Playing Super Mario 64 at his place was awesome. 20 years later, I forced my girlfriend to co-fund a Nintendo 64 so that we could relive the golden era today. I took her money and went headfirst into Super Mario 64, expecting it to give me the same dopamine rush as some of the great games from today. We all know old games have their flaws, but I figured, how bad could it be? And there you have it, the definition of stupidity. A naive millennial powered by nostalgia. Look at it. You see, there's nothing wrong with an old game being held back by its technology per se. Something that is wrong though is the mindset of an adult person with a functioning brain, me, assuming that old games are going to give you the same experience as you got back in the days. So, as I harassed a friend of mine with all my complaints about the game, he stopped me describing an interesting simile of watching an old classic movie. He said, and I quote while changing the quote as it fits the video, "You can watch The Lord of the Rings today and tell people it's a bad movie criticizing it for having bad CGI, but then you're a moron." And I totally agree with those exact words which my friend most absolutely and definitely used to describe this genius simile. The context is very important when revisiting a classic. The CGI is definitely not what defines The Lord of the Rings as movies. There's so much more to it. So I could spend 10 minutes trash talking Super Mario 64 because of its badly aged camera system, claiming that it's a bad game, but that would make me a moron, which is why I'm going to spend only a couple of minutes talking about it now. Let's set the stage. Developers started to fiddle with 3D stuff for reals in the 90s. PlayStation offered 32 bits for developers, which was just enough to enable the players to see 3D objects from any angle chosen. This was called True 3D. And I'm not talking about this 2.5D kind of game where you could only walk in one direction at a time and the camera decides everything for you. I'm talking about this advanced piece of art where you could rotate the camera how much you wanted on the x-axis and walk whichever direction you like to. Jumping Flash. This game holds the world record of being the first platforming video game in true 3D. However, even though it holds this record, the game was sure lacking. There's no way to adjust the camera on the y-axis, which makes it very hard to see where to land on the platforming part. Jumping high enough will rotate the camera a tiny bit, making you see more of the ground, but this was only happening automatically when the right conditions were met. The game was released only a year before Super Mario 64, hinting towards what a 3D platformer actually could look like. I think it's safe to say that back in the mid-90s, nobody knew anything about handling the point of view in 3D space. If you play a 3D platformer from today, you'd probably have an incredibly intelligent AI handling the camera while simultaneously having an option of adjusting it yourself with a second joystick. Well, the N64 controller only had one stick, and it wasn't by any means standard to have that single one, which puts even more weight on the importance of having an intelligent AI system controlling the dynamic camera, since you as a player had limited possibilities of adjusting it already by the design of the physical controller. It's kind of like being handed a fork while eating soup. But it was the first time anyone had 3D soup, so how could they know better? Looking back at the camera now, they objectively did some things right in Super Mario 64. The camera's general focus point is in line with Mario horizontally and a tiny bit above him vertically. This allows the player to see more of the surroundings further away from Mario. When Mario jumps, the camera won't follow him vertically until he reaches a certain height, which makes it much easier to see where to land. At certain times, the camera moves its focus point depending on its surroundings. For example, climbing the mountain at Bob-omb Battleground makes the camera automatically rotate around the mountain and move the focus point to the right, further away from Mario. This makes it much easier to see what's coming your way, since the mountain itself is not blocking half of the view. In some places, the camera switches to a fixed view in order to create a more spooky vibe. This is the case of Big Boo's Haunt. Not only does it fit the scary feeling that they're after, it also makes it much easier to navigate in the cramped areas of the course. It's a good example of when the camera work complements the level design. Comparing this advanced system to the camera system of Jumping Flash makes one wonder if it really was only 1 year between the releases of the games. However, even though the game revolutionized camera controlling in 3D space, it was far from perfect. For example, more than often the level design worked against the camera. The Pyramid of Shifting Sandland is a perfect example of this. In order to get one of the stars in this course, I have to see things that I'm not simply allowed to see. It doesn't make sense. Lakito's like, "You're not my mom," and refuses to move the camera into the right position. In other stages, such as Tiny Huge Island, Lakito screws you over constantly. Here, this stupid little cloud fart just moves the camera without a warning, making me almost fall down at the most frustrating places. And as the player, we are allowed to change the camera with the C buttons. So if we have the option, why does Lakito override it? He's like,
You want to change the camera angle? I'm afraid I can't let you do that.
And dear God, why is there a sound effect to the camera? I don't need to hear that sound ruining my day 30 times a minute. So, with all of this frustration still going strong inside my body, would I recommend someone playing the game for the first time in modern age? Well, yeah, for plenty of reasons. Not only are there a lot of cool game design choices throughout the game, there's also a huge piece of history to admire. Knowing how much the game changed the industry, I think it's kind of an obligation to try it out at least once if you have the chance. I'm not saying a new player would love every second of the game, because you most certainly would not. But getting to know Mario's first steps into the 3D world sets things in a perspective which is impossible to understand without experiencing it firsthand. You can read about the taste of ravioli, but nothing beats eating it.
This one's for all the viewers out there, including but not restricted to you. Viewer, you're so cool, and with you I feel awesome too. Viewer, understand, I'm gonna lie till the very end. Viewer, 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 I love you. Oh, everything I'm doing, yeah, I'm doing for you. 1,000